we can't change people's behavior just by giving them new information. I'm sure, Mark, you've seen this a million times. You've told people, look, here's how you got to handle your finances. Here's how, you got to approach your behavior, but they don't change. Why? Because they haven't changed how they feel about it. And the public speaker's job, the communicator's job, is to transfer feelings, to change the way people feel so that you can change how they think, so that you can change what they do. But if you don't start with how they feel, if you don't know how to influence how someone feels, then it's very, very difficult to get them to think differently and then, of course, to act differently.
In today's episode of the Hero of the Hour podcast, Mark chats with Michael Port, CEO of Heroic Public Speaking Worldwide. Michael is the author of 9 books, which have been translated into 29 different languages. A few have become bestseller status on Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and USA Today. Mark and Michael discuss the misconception that marketing gets you clients, when in reality, marketing builds awareness. Something Michael said that really stood out to me is that you can't change people's behaviors just by providing them with information. Thank you so much for joining and enjoy a credible episode.
I'm here to talk to somebody who is a very special person, a very good friend, and the founder and creator of Heroic Public Speaking. So, Michael Port, welcome.
Thank you so much.
All I can tell you, Michael, is that when I started to become a client of yours, what was so interesting is that what I thought was so incredible is I could see that I was a decent public speaker, but just using the techniques that you taught me. I mean, very simple, meaning start with a big idea, tell stories all the way through, and then leave them on a high. Took that level of speakership to another level. And then when we brought all of our guys in, all of our other advisors, and I think you've worked, we've expanded, since then. And in fact, I'm trying to get them into the program. I'm talking to Amy about it. It took their speaking where they improved instantaneously and gave them more confidence, ability to close deals, and it changed how they felt about themselves. And it was just such a valuable process. How did you come up with the idea of Heroic Public Speaking? I mean, tell us, I'd love to know, tell us kind of where you started, where you are right now, and kind of where you're going, because it's an amazing company.
Sure. Thank you so much. It is a very unique company, in part because it was founded by Amy, my wife, and I, and both of us were professional actors. So Amy has her master's in acting from Yale, and I have my master's in acting from NYU. Now, mind you, she got into both NYU and Yale, and I did not get into Yale. So clearly she made a mistake and went to the wrong program.
Well, I invited the wrong person on the podcast then, no. But,
yes, you did. But I was available. See, that's the difference. You just can't get her. So look, I left acting pretty early on because I found that I was very entrepreneurial. And when you're an actor, in those days, at least, 25 plus years ago, you had to sit around and wait for people to give you jobs. And that just didn't square up with the way that I wanted to exist in the world. And I talked my way into a job for which I was completely unqualified. And my acting background helped me do that. But I told them I was unqualified, mind you. The best communication in the world is the most honest and direct communication. And so I just made my case for why I thought they should give me a shot. Fortunately, they did. And I spent about 4 or 5 years on the business side of the fitness industry. And then I went out and I actually started my own business, just a little consulting business, which grew pretty rapidly over time as I started writing books. And I spent the first 10 years on that business, which is called Book Yourself Solid, which I just sold to Sean Dill, who is a wonderful entrepreneur himself, and he's going to take that company, keep running with it. But then in 2013 and 14, I started piloting work around communications with my clients. And actually, it's interesting that we mentioned Sean, because I had Sean at one of my events and I put him up on stage And I said, let's just use this next half hour just to work on some performance skills. And it wasn't part of that curriculum. And I started working with him, and the audience's jaws hit the floor. People were just shocked by how quickly I could help him make a transformation. And I was confused, frankly, Mark, because to me, it was the easiest thing in the world. And I said, isn't this how public speaking training is delivered? I mean, you guys have gone to public speaking training events. And they said, no, we've never seen anything like this. And I realized at that moment that the particular skills that Amy and I had were not unique in the world in which we came from, but were very, very unique in this space of public speaking training. And so what we decided to do was build a master's level public speaking and communications training and development organization that would be similar to what Amy had at Yale and what I had at NYU as actors, but for people that were non-actors. And so we've re-engineered the craft of acting to apply to keynoting, breakouts, workshops, pitches, and more. And we can create really, really quick transformation because we know the craft of performance. And that's what's critically important to recognize. Some people think, well, it's just talent. You either have talent as a performer or you don't. And it's kind of magic and nobody really understands it. And yes, there are certainly people that have some more talent for performance than others. But the best performers in the world are the performers who have the most mastery over the craft of performance. And so what we're doing is we're teaching non-actors the craft of performance so they can stop speaking and start performing in the most honest and authentic way. But here's the thing. One of the reasons that so many people have trouble with public speaking is that they think it's that your job as a speaker is to share information. But if that was enough, people would do everything they're supposed to do because the information is already out there. We can't change people's behavior just by giving them new information. I'm sure, Mark, you've seen this a million times. You've told people, look, here's how you got to handle your finances. Here's how, you got to approach your behavior, but they don't change. Why? Because they haven't changed how they feel about it. And the public speaker's job, the communicator's job, is to transfer feelings, to change the way people feel so that you can change how they think, so that you can change what they do. But if you don't start with how they feel, if you don't know how to influence how someone feels, then it's very, very difficult to get them to think differently and then, of course, to act differently.
I will tell you, that I had the same experience with you and with Amy in the sense that you saw people that were terrible public speakers that in 10 minutes they got acceptable, and you saw good people become very good and very good people become great. It was was David Letterman's stupid pet tricks. That's Michael Port's trip to, it's almost amazing how quickly it happens. Because you think like anything like that, you'd have to put in your 10,000 hours and practice and practice and practice to get any better. And it was almost instantaneous. And it seemed to be such a powerful, like I believe that in most businesses, it's really about the power to influence or the power of persuasion. You're an expert at the power of persuasion.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I would say I don't really think about it from that perspective so much. Yes, persuasion and influence is ultimately our goal when we're speaking, when we're performing. But really, if the speaker's focused primarily on just persuading, rather than really understanding the people that they're trying to persuade, they're not going to do it. Meaning, what I see a lot of times, people like, just give me some tricks on, how to say the right thing so that they do what I want. And yeah, certainly there are turns of phrases and some structures that can work to, to influence people's decision-making process. But fundamentally, the people who are actually the most persuasive are the ones who understand the people they're talking with the best. Because there are certain elements that are foundational in any type of presentation. Number one, a big idea, a core message. Number two, a promise that the people who are hearing want. Number three, being able to demonstrate that you understand the way the world looks to the people in the room. And number four is being able to highlight all of the consequences of not adopting the big idea. And of course, being able to highlight the rewards of adopting the big idea and achieving the promise. But I mention this because I want to point out the third foundational element, which is being able to understand the way the world looks to the people in the room and being able to articulate that you understand it. Because Mark, let's say I want to try to change how you think about something.
Mhm.
So you change what you do. But let's say you've been thinking about that thing in that way for 35 or 40 years. That's a long time. That means those tracks in your brain are pretty deep grooves. And I'm not gonna be able to snap my fingers and just get you to think differently. So if I just focus on the information, but I don't demonstrate that I understand the way the world looks to you, it's going to be very easy for you to say no. You go, yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. And I kind of want that. And that would be great. But you know what? I'm different. You don't really get me. It's an easy no. And when people are provoked or challenged with new ideas, because big ideas tend to challenge the status quo, their default response is no. And so part of our job is to help people to drop their filters, to open up, to become more available to us. But if they don't think we understand the way the world looks to them, if they don't think we really get them on every level that is necessary, they're going to say no. And so that's where I focus first, because once you've got that, then the persuasion part comes much more easily.
You know, I should have figured that out because it's common sense. But the thing, you know, I think, you know, when people think about that, they think, oh, I'll go and they'll tell me I have a little more stage presence, or they'll tell me not to do this or that, or, you know, some kind of like. But what was so interesting about the process and working with you for several years has been, and our team for several years has been, it's such a craft, that meaning it is just like anything else that you do. It's not like you just go out there and deliver a stem winder. It is a process, and starts every way, like, you know, and somehow for some reason, I don't know, my inclination was not to think through that much, or to think that it was more on the fly than it really was,
Yeah.
was mastering a craft.
Well, Mark, that's perfectly reasonable, actually. And it's fact how most people think about it, because we talk all day long.
Right.
So we think we're pretty good at it. And if you have some charm, you've got a lot of charm, and you've got the gift for the gab, you know, people have been responding really well for most of your life to the way that you present ideas. And that's true for many of the people who are listening right now. There's another level, though. And that next level looks to an audience like it doesn't take any work, like they're just doing it off the cuff. But in fact, that next level is based on much more front loading of the work. You know, when you see Mick Jagger perform, or Adele perform, or Beyonce perform, or you go see Hamilton on Broadway, or you watch an Olympian swim in a pool, or, you know, do crazy gymnastic stunts on, you know, on rings hanging, you know, 15 feet in the air. It looks so easy. I mean, it looks like they could do it all day long, because they have mastered the craft. They're just better than anybody else because of the mastery of craft, not just because they were born that way, but they have mastered the craft. So the thing that hangs us up when we see somebody who performs in such a way that it seems like they're just making it up, but they're brilliant, is that we think they're just making it up or just winging it, so we should do the same. We don't recognize that very often hundreds of hours of work went into that performance. So when you're watching the best keynote speakers in the industry, when you go to a big conference and there's thousands of people there and a keynote speaker comes out to open the event, if they're a professional speaker, as opposed to, say, just a celebrity who was brought in to put butts in seats and they don't really care that much about the speech, it's going to look like the easiest thing in the world to them. But they have been working on it for years. And that's what we forget. You know, your mastery of finance has been something that you've been developing over years.
Right.
You might have had an aptitude for it, or maybe you had an aptitude for math. I don't know. But when you were 18, 19, 20, you were just learning it. It was all new to you. But now your mastery comes from so many years of study, so many years of experience, that when somebody, you know, is 25, 30 years old, they can't hold a candle to what you know because they just don't have the experience or the craft. And I think it's important to remember that if you want to be the best in class at anything, study and practice is required. And, you know, top performers know this. You know, we work with people that are at the top end of their field. So, you know, we've got Navy SEALs and astronauts and Olympians and founders of companies, and, you know, and many other folks who have had extraordinary accomplishments in their life. And they come to us because they recognize, oh, I want to move into another stage of visionary leadership. And I need to work on my ability to present my ideas. And I need to give the time and the effort to that craft, just the way that I did to the craft that I built that got me here. And, you know, there's only really a handful of people who get that.
You know, it's so funny. I want to just hearing you speak is getting me excited, getting me inspired. I want to get right back into the studio with you and get working and get our team going.
Let's go.
It's going to motivate me to have Maureen, book some time with you and Amy as soon as we get off the call. It's just so life changing. You know, I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, I just finished my third book with your help, but I'm only I know you're the author of 9 books in 29 languages, and I wouldn't ask you what's your favorite. It's like trying to pick who's your favorite child. But I would love to say if somebody was watching this and they said, give me 1 or 2 or 3 books. If I was going to start and just said I wanted to read a Michael Port book, tell me the 1 or 2 or 3 that they should look at and why.
Yeah, start with Steal the Show.
Okay.
That's a great place to start because it's focused on, it's really a tour de force on the craft of public speaking. The first third of it, I really focus on finding your voice because there is no one way to do this work. Each person is an individual, should have their own style, and should not look or behave or sound like anybody else. So if somebody tells you there's a formula, a secret formula that if everybody just did, they'd be brilliant at this, they'd be lying to you. It is an art as much as it is a craft. And the artistic part of it, even for folks who don't see themselves as artistic, the artistic part of it is really lies in the self-expressed individual, so that each individual can feel fully self-expressed in their own way when they're communicating with others, so that you're not putting on an act or trying to be like somebody else. Like if I tried to be Mark Murphy, I'd fail miserably. There's only one Mark Murphy, thankfully. You know, there's just one, right? No, I mean that seriously. Like that's the great thing about being an individual, is that there's only one of you, and your style is your style, and that's what we develop. I'm not going to try to turn you into me or Amy or someone else. And the opportunity that you have for full self-expression is really, really meaningful. And when you feel comfortable and you have found your voice, then the craft gets even easier. So I love this work in large part, you know, just personally because I get to learn new stuff every day. I mean, I'm working with someone like you. I get to learn so much about finance. Then the next day, I'm working with somebody who's, talking about Six Sigma and lean project management. And then the next day, it's M&A, mergers and acquisitions. So it's really cool. I feel really lucky about that because what people are speaking on, it doesn't matter to us. Our job is working with them on the craft. And there's craft associated with organizing content and ideas, structuring it, scripting it, and then delivering it. And the way that you do so on video might be different than the way that you do so on stage. It's going to be different when there's 3 people in the room versus 300 or 3,000. But once you start to pick up the craft, you can apply that craft to all the different mediums that you find yourself in.
I've brought some friends in, some, United States congressmen, who were not congressmen when you met with them, who got elected. We've worked with, some divorce attorneys. We've worked with, I first met you, I was brought in with the Fortune Management, who is a public speaking company. And I think right now we're up to about 150 coaches there. And what was so amazing about that is I have seen people in that organization become great public speakers. I mean, they literally went from couldn't move a room to be able to move a room on a dime. But the
Don
thing,
Corey is a great example.
Yeah, he's a perfect example of a guy who went from he was good, solid, to somebody
okay.
who can move a room. And and he's not the only one. There's others. I read, you mentioned Book Yourself Solid. Obviously, Sean Dill and Lacey Book are just good friends, and I am huge fans. I think the 3 of you or the 4 of you are going to do some amazing work with Book Yourself Solid. Tell us a little about that company. Tell us about that book and that company, because I've read that book too. That's another one of my favorites.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Book Yourself Solid is the first book that I wrote. There are 4 editions of that book because, over time I kept finding ways to improve it. And it is still one of the best-selling marketing books for service business owners in the world. And I'm really, really proud of it because it is a marketing system for service business owners who don't typically like marketing and selling that much. And, I wrote it originally because I had one of the last companies that I was with, I had a department that I ran that had about 500 freelancers, independent professionals. And financial advisors are often independent professionals. They're building their businesses. Some have a couple people working for them. Some have hundreds or thousands, lots of different sized businesses, but realtors and attorneys and accountants, they're all in the business of getting clients. But most people don't want to spend their time getting clients. They want to spend their time doing the work. And I was the same way. So in the early 2000s, I re-engineered a system that I thought could work without a lot of attention, meaning so you didn't have to spend all your time marketing. Because here's what I discovered. Most people think that marketing gets you clients. If I just do enough marketing, everybody will know of me, and then I'll get lots and lots of clients. The fact of the matter is, marketing does not get you clients. Marketing just creates awareness for the products and services you sell. What actually books the business is what you do once somebody becomes aware of you. So I built a system that included the core self-promotion strategies, because there's really only 6 of them. And you execute on just a few of those core self-promotion strategies. And then once somebody becomes aware of you, I built a process that you can move that person through so that they become a client for life. And it worked really, really well, and seems to be easy for people to adopt and implement in their business, especially for people who don't really love marketing and selling or see themselves as marketers. It seemed to work really well for them. But it's based on a fundamental belief that there are certain people you're meant to work with and others that you're not. And your job is to make sure that you can reach the people you're meant to work with and you push away the people that you're not meant to work with. So the very first chapter of Book Yourself Solid is called the Red Velvet Rope Policy. And the red velvet rope policy suggests that you should only let in people that energize you and inspire you, but most importantly, allow you to do your best work. Because what happens when you're doing your best work? Two things. Number one, people are out in the world talking about your best work. And that's the best marketing in the world. I mean, I imagine most of your best clients come from referrals. We're a referral organization. You have to be nominated to come into our events. And we find that that's how the right people show up. And number two, you love the work you're doing, because anybody that has had a business that they're running for a long period of time will tell you that there are points where you do not feel like running that business anymore. And if you're working with clients that drain your energy, that make you feel like your work isn't worthwhile, or the work isn't effective, or make you feel like you want to do bodily harm to someone,
Right.
then you're not going to want to go out and get more clients. So you won't do what you need to do to fill up the business. And that's a really important fundamental principle of the Book Yourself Solid system. And yeah, I get it. You know, I mean, at the beginning, when people are starting out, they say, well, look, I need to take this one because I got bills to pay. I get it. All of that is fine. But just make sure you understand what makes an ideal client and what makes a dud client, so that you have an evaluation process, a filtration process that you can use anytime a new client comes in to see if they check off the boxes of what makes them ideal. And if they're not ideal, then you got to do some, pretty hard thinking about whether or not you should accept them. And if you are going to accept them, you got to manage in advance the areas where they're not ideal.
You know what? So funny you mentioned this, because it's a process. You've been in business a long time. And one of the things I tried to do is we started to kind of track our clients, in terms of we kind of rated them like bonds, AAA, AA, single A, triple B. And it didn't just have to do with size.
Did you have junk ones also?
Yeah, absolutely. But it didn't, especially when I was younger. And it wasn't necessarily just about money. It was about the enjoyment of working with them.
No,
and
it's not about money,
the whole experience. And the crazy. So then I started to think, and I go, well, let me try to see, let's say our top 20 or 25 and start to see what are the characteristics that were in common. And it started to be things like, things like they were usually big thinking people. They appreciated our expertise. They were loyal. Like I sort of had some like common denominators of about 7 or 8 things like that. And so then I go, okay, so we want to start to look for people like that. But where the light bulb went on, took me a couple of years. I go, it wasn't about them. That's who I am. And I was really looking for me. I was looking for people. And not that you couldn't be chameleon-like and you couldn't be the right coach for most people, but it's not. And by the way, it's not only you that you drain your energy; it's your entire team. How do you burn your team out on these people that are not loyal, don't appreciate your expertise, aren't big thinkers, don't all the things that we aspire to, want to be transactional rather than transformational. I don't want to be in any transactional relationship. I don't need it. I don't want it. And they can, I won't waste my time with that, because why would you want to do that at this point? Why would you not to be able to be your best?
You only live once, don't you?
All right.
You only live once.
Or to set up, or to do something that's set up not to either to fail or to not succeed as much as the way it should succeed. Why would you want to have your name attached to something that's going to fail? It's like, I hired Heroic Public Speaking. It's going to not work. And I want to be able to tell everyone it didn't work. I go, you're going to be right. Please don't waste your time or money, or waste Michael's time with that money. The other thing that you also say, where I think that everybody could use your service, because I think sometimes like in the beginning, when you talk about heroic public speaking, there are a lot of people that give keynotes. There's a lot of people that get up and speak in front of a crowd or in front of a board of directors or communicate with people. But the thing that I think we're so insightful about your books and what you do is, when I sit down with people, and I'll use my industry, like I don't believe in competition. I believe in differentiation. So I sort of wake up every day going, there's 4 financial services firms lined up, one after the other. Why are the best clients going to pick me rather than the other 3? Why are the best people going to want to work for me rather than the other 3? And so when I'll sit down with somebody in any industry, but I'll take my own, and they'll sit down and they'll say, well, what do you do for a living, Michael? And you go, well, I'm a wealth manager. I'm a financial planner. I'm a retirement specialist. I'm an estate. They can give you like 20 different things that they do. All of those could be true, but in my world, that's never higher than fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th on the list is that ultimately we're a marketing company first, we're a training company second, we're a human resource company third. And so the idea is your definition of marketing is so spot on. So I don't know a business that's out there that if they're not a marketing company first and use a lot of the principles that you teach in your books, much less than be able to present themselves in whatever form they are, I don't see how anybody can't use your service. And everybody, and I don't care if you said people that don't love marketing or not. It should be people. It could be anybody. If you love marketing, you should do that. Much less if you have a problem with it. And so that's so that I think everything. Our friend Fred Joyle wrote that book. Everything is marketing. I don't see any business where that's not the first thing that the company does. Any comments on that? Any thought about that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I as my wife would say, I always have a comment. So listen, here's the thing. You just brought something up, which is very, very important for us to recognize. And this is something that I wrote about in my most recent book called The Referable Speaker. And I wrote that with my good friend and colleague, Andrew Davis. And it's really for people who are on the professional circuit or want to be professional speakers. So that's not for everybody, that book. But you'd be surprised at what you can learn from reading about how you operate as a professional speaker, because there's a lot in there that's still relevant, even if you're not a professional. But one of the concepts that we focused on is what we call the visionary quest matrix. Here's the thing. You mentioned, look, there's a 5 wealth advisors on this corner. There's 5 I don't know, people who call themselves financial advisors on this corner. There's all sorts of people who use the same name to describe themselves. And most of them would be considered experts. Now, you would think that's good. And that might have been good 10, 20 years ago. But today, expertise has been commoditized. Because I can go on YouTube and I can learn almost anything about almost any financial concept from 10,000 different self-proclaimed experts. Now, we can argue about whether or not they're right, but you understand my point is that information is everywhere. If you want to learn how to sail, you can watch 1,000 videos teaching you every aspect of sailing. Now, you still got to go do it, but the experts are everywhere. And when expertise is everywhere, it's become a commodity. Anytime something, anytime there's lots of something, it becomes a commodity. So people have a race to the bottom when it's a commodity. You go, look, you say, well, I got five tips for, getting a higher return on your investment in bonds. And someone else comes along and goes, I got 6 tips. That's better. Someone else is like, no, you don't even need 6. I got 3 tips. That's all you need. Now you're like in a race to the bottom on tips, not inflation protected securities, but actual tips, like how-to tips. Yes. So here's the thing. What you have, the way that I think you've differentiated yourself is because people see you as a visionary in your space. And a visionary is someone who challenges the status quo and offers an alternative approach or a new way of solving problems for the betterment of the people that they serve. A visionary doesn't mean necessarily that you're an Einstein.
Right.
It means that you're challenging the status quo and offering a new or alternative perspective that changes the way people see the world. So here's how I see the difference between experts and visionaries. So as I said, the expert offers today's best practices. They essentially hold up a mirror to what most people do today. It's easy to learn. Anybody can become an expert on today's best practices. And they go, here you go. Here are today's best practices. People are like, oh, thanks. That's really helpful. But you don't remember their name.
Right.
But the visionary comes along and says, listen, I want to challenge the status quo. And I want to paint a picture for you of how the world can be if you take this approach. So they create the future for the people they serve. They help the people they serve see the world differently and see themselves in relation to the world differently. And that's what I think you do, whether or not you've ever referred to it as that. I think that's one of the things that differentiates you, because there's 1,000,001 people out there calling themselves wealth managers, financial advisors, probably 15 other terms.
Well, obviously,
But
as
I think
usual, you do it
can-
more eloquently than I do. I think it's kind of focusing on wisdom rather than knowledge, because again, YouTube has a lot of knowledge. It's harder to get wisdom, but I love your languaging much better. But I think ultimately, I think the real challenge is, I see, not just in my industry, I see in every industry, they're being disrupted all the time, whether it be artificial intelligence, whether it be commoditization of everything with the internet and everything that's there. And so ultimately, I try to teach our clients that they should not be afraid of being different. They should be afraid of being the same. And there's just this morass where it's like, it's that elevator speech where you sit down next to that person and it's and you go, well, what do you do for a living? And they want to put you in that box. And that's why I think, like, I want to do a good job on this podcast with you, because when you hear heroic public speaking, you have somebody goes, well, I'm not going to do any, I don't do a lot of public speaking. I don't think, I'd be interested in talking to Michael Port, and realize you need to speak to Michael Port, because you're not going to be doing keynotes for $500,000, at some big event in Las Vegas. But if you can move these principles and bring them into your business, it's going to not only arithmetically, it's going to geometrically grow your business, and you're going to have more fun doing it and have more confidence.
That's right.
And I think that sometimes, yeah. Like that's why I don't like the name. That's why I don't like the name of your company, because I think it's far more than that. Meaning, yeah.
No, we talked about that before.
Yeah.
In fact, we've been working on, just between me and you and all the tens of thousands of people who are listening, we've been working on a potential rebrand, actually, because really we're in thought leadership. That's what we do. We develop and train and manage thought leaders. We've been focusing on the keynoting side, intellectual property development side, but at the core, that's what we do. And the people who come to us are thought leaders, and they want to get their work out in the world in a significant way and have it spread. Sometimes, they do it, because they want to get paid for speaking or writing books. But some of them have businesses like you, and they want to be seen as thought leaders in their space, because they realize, wow, if I'm seen as a thought leader, that means I'm seen as a visionary. That means people come to me because I have an approach that is much more substantial and significant than the status quo. Everybody else is offering the same thing. So let me give you a framework that folks can use when they're doing pitches. A really straightforward framework, because a lot of the folks who are listening do pitches on a daily basis, if not, just a regular basis. So when somebody's considering what you're offering, they're listening for some key elements. And in order to continue to consider saying yes, they need a few questions answered in the affirmative before they do. So, for example, the first thing that people generally are trying to figure out when you make a pitch is, will this thing work? Will it be successful? Will it work? Does it make sense? Is it just structurally sound? Is it reasonable, logical? Because if they say, no, I don't think this is really going to work. Like if you said, Michael, here's how we're going to build your wealth. We're going to buy 1-year CDs with all of your money. I'd be like, wait, what? No, that's not going to work. I'm not even listening to anything else after that. So they got to get a yes. If you don't get a yes, it's over. So you've got to first make sure you're structuring the pitch in a way that people go, oh yeah, that makes sense. That would work. Then if they say yes, the next thing they're trying to figure out is, well, will it work for me? Because you might give a pitch and someone goes, well, that's a great idea. I think that could really work. Not for me, I think for somebody else. So they've got to be able to say, yeah, that would work for me. that really would work for me or for our company or whoever you're pitching to. If they say, no, it won't, it's done. Doesn't get to the next question. If they say, yes, it will, you get to the third question, which is, are they the ones that I want to do this with? Because if what they hear sounds like it'll work and it's worth it to them, it's worth it for them, they might say, you know what? I don't think you're the one. I'm going to find somebody who can do this because it's worth it to me, but you're not the one. So if you get a no on that, it's not going to happen. If you get a yes, then you get a yes to the whole pitch. You just got to get those 3 yeses first. So when you're thinking about pitches, conversations with people, are you sure that you can describe the thing that you're pitching in a way that they go, oh yeah, that's absolutely going to work? And number 2, can you pitch it in such a way that they go, oh yeah, that's absolutely for me? And can you pitch it in such a way that they go, oh yeah, I want you to be the one to do this? Because that's not easy to get a yes on are you the one to do it in high stakes situations when they don't already know you or know you well.
I always look and I look at my experience everywhere, but my experience specifically with your company, and in that I have zero appetite for expenses rather. I mean, if you're an expense in my company, you're always on the chopping block. But I have almost an unlimited appetite for investment. And if I can get a 4 or 5 to 1 return on my money or more, and I think you get a lot more by working with your company than a 4 or 5 to 1 return, I have an unlimited appetite for investments. So if somebody's watching this podcast, tell me a little bit about, give me a little more flavor of some of the services you provide. And the other thing I'd really like about your company is there's lots of ways to enter the company. Meaning, I have been to a workshop where there was 50 people in the room, and then we've had many sessions where it was just me and you and Amy, and there were sessions when I brought my team just to work with you and Amy, and everything in between. So tell people a little about some of the services, and tell people how are different ways that you can kind of access your company.
Sure. So thank you for asking. Primarily, we work with people that have been nominated or referred to us. So if somebody wants to come to us and they reach out to you and say, hey, Mark, can you make an introduction? Then we'll get on the phone with them and make sure that what they want is what we can deliver. We're in a very, very fortunate place where we don't have to take the work. And that allows us to make sure that we work only with people with whom we do our best work and that we can deliver everything that they need. You stack the deck in your favor if you only work with people that, you can make sure you can deliver on your promises to. So we do a 2-day workshop, and we do not charge for that workshop. But again, you need to have a referral into it. If we didn't do it that way, we could not make it free. There'd just be too many people who would want to come, and it, be a little bit of a mess. But we do a 2-day workshop, which in New Jersey, at our headquarters. And that's generally the best place to start. It's not just because it's free, but because until you actually experience what we do, you can't actually understand it. We can be the best communicators in the world, but when you have never experienced something, just hearing about it is never enough. So that's why we do that. So if people want to come to that, just ask Mark for a referral, and he'll make the introduction to us. We also do a 7-month comprehensive training for people who want to master the craft of both content development and script writing, as well as the performance of that script, speaking on stage. And generally, people who are coming to that are either professional speakers or people who want to be professional speakers, or entrepreneurs who use speaking to advance their business or advance their brand or book business at the back end of a speech. And you're always people ask me, what's the trick? What's the secret for selling more at the back end of a speech? And I always, with a little bit of a, cheekiness, say, just be best in class, be the best one on that stage, and people will ask to work with you. You don't need any tricks, to trick them into working with you. That's not, it's not a long-term strategy that's effective. But in order to come into that grad program, is what we call it, you got to go through that 2-day workshop. We have faculty members who can do one-on-one coaching just for pitches or for full-length speeches or for TED Talks. We have writers who can write books for you, write scripts for you. We also do slide design work, contextual model design. So we help people visualize their ideas, because it's really, really effective to be able to show your ideas. You've probably seen Simon Sinek start with why, his why, what, and how 3 circles, which made him really, really famous. But it's a very simple contextual model that helps you understand his big idea and helps you spread that big idea to other people, because you can draw it for them. And those are just a few of the things we do. But it really, our environment is really for people who really want to get better at this. Like, we're not just a tips and tricks kind of place. We don't have like a $200 online course. We're serious people who do rigorous work with serious people.
Well, no, but again, why, if you're serious about your business or your life, would you want to do anything half-ass? Why would you not want? Why would you not want to do it in elegance and excellence? And I don't see how people. I guess and by the way, if you're offering a 2-day free course, I don't think you can go any lower than that. You can't reduce the price.
Nope.
But isn't it so? But the thing what screams to me about that is that I've, for 37 years, have always set something up with a client where I've said, Michael, here's a little bit of how we like to work. I'm going to spend maybe an hour with you or so. I want to find out how you think about your business and your family and your money and your life and all the things that are important to you and Amy. At the end of that first meeting, I'm going to ask you to send me a little bit of information. And then I'd like to have a second meeting that might go an hour and a half or maybe or 2 hours, where I'm going to lay out some comments and some recommendations, but a clear strategy going forward. No obligation on my part, no obligation on your part. But at the end of that second meeting, I think it should be clear whether we have a relationship or not. And when you give a person and you say to them, hey, I'm going to open kimono. You're going to see everything we do. And there's no obligation on anybody's part. Everybody can walk away. Does that work for you? I've only said it about 4,000 times, and I think we have 4,000 clients, as a result of that. I mean, nope. I mean, it works. It works 100% of the time or more. I always kid our guys. And what screams to me about that is, it is so powerful, and you're so confident what you do, that it's, if you said to me the opposite, we need $50,000 up front, and we need a 3-year contract that's unbreakable, and still owe us the money, and you got this, you got that, and you got, and you got to lock me in. It tells me the exact opposite, that you got to lock me in and get my money up front, because if I wanted to leave, that you're telling me that a lot of people want to leave your company, where you're telling me the opposite. They're beating down the door, and what I hear from you is, even though you're selling some amazing services, you're always the buyer, not the seller. You're giving them the opportunity to get the port experience, and you don't get to get it. You get to earn the opportunity to go get that. And that is just so damn powerful. And it screams to me why you've been so successful, because how many companies do you do business with that do the exact opposite? They've got to tie up 9 ways to Sunday, because they know you're not going to be happy with the service often. You and I don't have that
exactly right.
fear. We have none of that fear.
No. And, it's really nice. It just makes it so much easier. So, we have people who will, every day will call up and say, listen, I'm nominated by so-and-so. They did HPS grad. I'd love to do grad. When can I start? We say, you can't. You have to go to core first. And they say, well, what does that cost? We say, nothing. It's a 2-day workshop. For 30 minutes on the second day, we're going to talk about grad, but that's it. The rest of it is just a full-on training. And they say, wait, what? Can't I just give you my money now to hold my spot in grad, because I know they fill up? No, you can't. You have to go through core. We do this because we want them to be 150% sure that we're the right organization for them. And, there are definitely some people who've been like, I can't make that one, or I can't make that one. I need to start right now. And we still say, I'm sorry, this is how we do it. Because we find that we don't have to sell. we can just say, here's what grad is. And they go, oh, I was within 3 hours, I'm ready to go. Let's do this. And the relationship develops in a much easier way. You know, there's no pressure. Nobody's pulling anybody, twisting their arm. And then when they actually start the deeper work and they've made the bigger commitment, they're so excited because they've already experienced it. They've had the transformation themselves. And so we look at the work from a transformational perspective, not a transactional perspective. Our job is to help the people we serve transform. Our job is not to transact with them. And we're really, really clear about what our job is, and that's influenced the decisions we make. And it's been, I think, really good for the people we serve.
Well, I want to, first of all, a lot of people say they want to get a seat at the table. I think what you clearly do is help people build their own damn tables. And I think that's evident. And just thank you for all you do for me and for my company. And just thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. And I just appreciate you and appreciate Amy and all the people at Heroic Public Speaking. And thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me just give that right back, Mark, because you are one of the most generous people that I have met in business. You are always looking for ways to find opportunities for the people that you know. And I think everybody can take a page out of your playbook because you've had a tremendous effect on us personally and professionally. And we talk about it all the time. We never forget it. So thank you, Mark.
I would say I called this the Hero of the Hours podcast because I like to have people on the podcast who are either heroes to me or heroes to other folks. And you certainly fit that criteria. So thank you, Michael. And I will, you'll be hearing from me soon.
Good.
Thanks.
We'll talk to you soon.